First of all, thank you again for joining us. My name is Chris Bridgeland. I run our technical teams in Couchbase here in EMEA. I've got the pleasure today of having on our Couch2couch series of chats, Elliott Winskill from PMC. Elliott, it'd be great to get you to do a little introduction of yourself for the people watching this.
Hi, so yes, Elliott Winskill, I'm product manager at PMC. So my background is around the consultancy of the technical side. So I've spent a lot of time working with retailers, understanding their systems, a lot of it, some of them legacy, some of them more modern. And with that, we've applied that knowledge to help us move into the product world. And since then, I've been building a mobile application called Store Enabler, which we started around 5 years ago. And then recently, in the last year or so, been building a new platform using some new technology to try and help retailers understand the modern ways and the way that digitalization is going to impact that really core in-store environment. So yes, that's me and PMC.
So let's talk about you and your team. You've been obviously running a development team for the last few years, and people have classically gone from those sort of waterfall development cycles, and especially if you're looking at your application with Store Enabler being mobile enabled. How has that changed with adopting agile capabilities and CI/CD approaches to developing?
Unbelievably difficult thing to do, and something that took us a good 2.5 years to properly maneuver transition our teams from waterfall to agile, and we went through some real challenges to do so. But I think that what agile has proven, not just in our business, but across the market, is that if you can get your business truly running in an agile way, you can offer better quality with shorter time periods. And everyone looks for that trio of quality, cost, and time. And waterfall just doesn't harness that ability to deliver the quality within the right time frame. And cost is always a subjective view. But in that whole CI/CD element, that's essential to getting the time, because you can be agile, you can do things fast, you can be a very quick running team. But actually, if you haven't got the tools and the technology to keep the development processes fast, then actually what you'll end up with is technology and your development become your blocker to agility. And we had that a number of times. We were using some old technology to run our how we deploy our solution, and what we were finding was we were getting held up waiting for those things to process. So the transition has been a challenge, and it's really interesting that at this time, in this really interesting place we are in COVID-19, we'd never been challenged on how successful our transition was. That was the one thing that I had said since we finished a little while ago was, we need something to show that works. And I think if you've got a truly agile and a successful change, and your impact to your delivery is where you want it to be with agile, then COVID-19 was the best test that could have come your way. And thankfully for us, it was a massive success. And some of the stuff that we've seen is that remote working, and I know we'll get onto that, but the agile element of that maneuver, we found we were just as optimal remote working as we've been in the office, and I think I couldn't have promised that before we went into this period, and that's a massive win for us as a business.
So how has this affected your team? Do you want to expand on some of the things that are possibly happening with the different functions you got?
It's interesting, right? There are two main challenges we've faced in this period, and actually testing is a very good example of that. One of our biggest blockers we've noticed is around hardware. So you transition to remote working. Test teams are so used to doing everything with physical devices. Does everyone have the right devices at home to be able to support a mobile estate, for example? And that's some of the challenges that we've faced, and the test teams have presented real blockers, and we've had to adjust. And the thing about the agile process is there is no one perfect agile approach, right? Agile is just a methodology of the way you act. That we use Scrum is our approach to agile, but actually, there is no pure Scrum. It's about finding out what works, and our test team is a great example. As you say, they need that engagement. They need to talk to the developers to understand what they've developed, to be able to apply that into their test scripts and into their delivery. And they need to talk to the product owners and to the BAs, the business analysts, to understand how that applies. And I think that's where cloud has found its new world in terms of the visual, the virtual communications like we're using today, because they now have access and they now have the ability. But on top of that, we as a business have had to look at that, because there are certain elements, like, for example, maybe applying a couple more testers into the team to support the testers, to give them someone they can talk to and bounce ideas off of and engage with. Has been super essential. Small tweaks that we've had to make to adjust to this new way of working, because, as you say, not everyone works the same, whereas our developers, on the other hand, are more than happily developing away at speed and delivering everything they need to deliver, as they have always done, with no interruptions. So yeah, there is slightly tweaks you have to make, but I think if you've got a good agile process, they're so easy to make those changes to really keep that development cycle and productivity, because you've got that key metric, you've got that velocity that you can judge how this impact has impacted you. We actually published internally some results on our velocities, and we didn't make any changes until we'd done one sprint within remote working, because until you've done one, you can't tell what the impact will be. And data and statistics is the best way to see that impact. And thankfully, we haven't seen a massive impact, but we've seen a little impact to some of our testing capability, and hence we've made some changes to support them.
You talked briefly about cloud. You mentioned cloud earlier, about sort of taking on new concepts or new technologies. And with that in mind, how has that surge and up and down been affecting you with regards to the activities both inside the company and the focus that you've got? What's the effect on you at the moment?
So, really interestingly, as a business, we wouldn't have known this, but as a business, we are unbelievably well set up for this new environment. 90% of the systems that we use as an internal business are all cloud-based today. So, and I think we knew we had that in place for all of that BCP continuity and making sure you're scalable. But it's actually only when you implement it across business-wide and you actually, how many times has businesses really trialed BCP across the entire business and not maybe by location? So that in itself has proven that we can still do everything we need to do for our customers, we can offer today. The big impact that we've seen is we've got some customers, especially in your sort of FMCG area, where they are hitting peaks they've never had before. And actually they're stopping projects because they're afraid of touching their stores and damaging the impact to how much of an impressive peak that they're going through during this period. But in the same vein, we've got customers who have had to completely shut down for the safety of their business. They've either furloughed their staff or they've put pause on all of their projects, and on the flip side, that frees up lots of resources in our world. And the challenge we've got as an organization, being in this climate, knowing we can operate at full capacity if we want to, is making that decision over what is integral to making sure when we finish this period, we are ready to support those customers who need to turn back on, those customers who need to kick projects back off, but also put us in a better position in terms of being ready for the next phase of what new world retail is going to look like.
So what are your thoughts on how, when the restrictions get removed a little bit, what do you think is possibly going to happen inside the retail industry, and certainly with some of the experiences that the retailers need to consider?
The consumers changed. They've learned a lot, and they've gained this level of experience now on technology that you couldn't have imagined your grandparents or parents having at this stage in their lives. So because of that, when we come out of this, you're going to have three types of consumers that are going to come out the back. You're going to have those that are still very fearful, and you're going to have a large proportion of the vulnerable and people who are nervous about this, who are going to find this very challenging coming back out of isolation. And in doing so, they're going to shop differently, because they're going to shop with the same fear that we do now when we walk into Tesco's or Sainsbury's. And if you think, even technology change that's forced through, like the new contactless change in the payment space to £45, that is a fundamental change to retail in terms of what you can buy with £45 compared to 30. Seems a small difference, but actually you know what, there's going to be loads of people who are still going to want to keep within that £45 so they can tap their card, so they don't have to touch the machine or put the hand in. You know, there's all of those differences that are going to be there for a while. And as the government said yesterday, you know, there will be some restrictions that will hang until next year. And that's a cultural change that people will go through, because a year is a very, very long time to go through. And then you've got the second type is the people like the youngsters, the generations coming out who are going to be just desperate to get out, right? And they've got, you know, they've sat at home. They've probably not bought as much clothes as they would normally buy, because, you know what, while ordering online is cool, I've got nothing better to do. I'd rather not. I want to save money. It's a tough period. And they're going to come out and they're going to go out with this bang of kind of, I want to go back to the pubs, I want to go back to the restaurants. And in fashion retail, I'd expect to see an increase in the fashion retailers who are attracting those type of customers, because I know that, you know, the thought of going out now and going to the shopping centre, I historically would have been like, oh, let's not bother. But actually, I'm looking forward to that experience now, whereas maybe I wasn't when I could do it whenever I wanted, just because it's a different experience. But that puts a lot of pressure on the retailers, because what you can't afford coming out the back of this is to not be able to service those customers with the experience, that little bite of experience they're looking for. Now, everyone spoke about experience in retail for a few years now, but it was always kind of a conversation of, yeah, we need to give a better experience to our customers. Customers are going to come out of this and be begging for that experience. And the retailers that can immediately open that store with that new experience of what retail looks like in a post-COVID-19 world, they're the ones that are going to see that initial burst of footfall. And then there'll be a delayed footfall on those retailers who have to either catch up or will wait for the consumer to come back on board with being in normal life and being able to just wander around the store. So I think there's some really big decisions that every retailer is going to look at over the coming months about who am I trying to get in my store, and what is their reaction to the world going to be when they come out of isolation or come out of this lockdown, because everyone will have changed, and you've got to relook at your consumer, and that's a huge pressure. But it's also it's a catalyst, and it's the opportunity to do stuff differently for retailers that might mean some retailers find that they do a lot better than they anticipated coming out the back of COVID-19.
Are you able to share with the people on the call, you know, what you were looking for out of Couchbase?
I think in some respects, the COVID-19 has been a bit of a major win for technology cloud businesses, right? They've proven to the world that they can operate at full capacity and no one really feels a difference. Yeah, you look at things like Netflix, you look at things like Amazon and their delivery, you look at companies like all of those big cloud enterprises, and they have managed this COVID-19 isolation across the world. Their services have kept up. There's been very little reports of any big major services going down, and video conferencing is exactly the same, right? And those companies have proven cloud can be relied on. And that's something that sometimes in retail there's that, can we trust it? Can we trust the online? Are we going to have offline scenarios? You know, how are we going to cater for that? There's this trust worry because they're so used to having systems in store. But COVID-19's proven you can go to technology in the cloud. And we made these decisions 18 months ago because we also trusted cloud. We know the capacity and the capability of what it's going to bring to retail. And we need our retailers to catch up with us on that view. And we know they will. And this has been will be a helpful hand in that journey, because now we're going back out with the technology that has now been proven to be able to cater for a mass global epidemic, and be able to still provide unbelievable service to its customers. And we're bringing a platform that's designed to do the same for in-store retailers. So we went down the line of choosing, you know, your best of breed serverless technology so it can scale without us having to scale. We went for the best of breed mobile technology with our applications, which we've developed in the latest technologies that have been available on there. And then we started to look at how do we, you know, one of the key bits and one of the big barriers to cloud has been, how do you provide that offline experience with online data? You know, that real-time information with an offline experience where the screen moves fast and the experience journey goes to the speed of which you'd expect a local system to work. And that was where we started to look at solutions like Couchbase, because of that capability to provide us both that speed of data from the amazing centralized systems that we've been built that is underpinned by Couchbase today, down into our mobile clients with all of that rich, local, very targeted data that's about exactly what you need at the pinprick of your finger. And that journey and that combination of technologies, I think, is only going to become the basic, the expected of retail solutions in the future. And that's why we've invested a lot in our new platform, but also put in the time to think about what we want it to be. And I think this COVID-19 has been an interesting time. It's a challenge for everyone, and it's given us something to think about. But I think it's proven that the cloud technology is ready, and it's ready to take over. And you know, solutions need to watch out that don't adopt or don't embrace the cloud environment.
What are your, visions of what's going to happen once we come out of this COVID-19 situation?
I think it goes back to that core principle, doesn't it? That consumers have changed. We've all changed as people, and I think because of that, I think the new working practices. And I sat with our CEO last week and had this conversation that was like, you know, this has to change how we view the way we work, because we have successfully proven that every single person in our business can work from home, and the technology we have can support that journey. Now, I think there's going to be a secondary challenge, which is actually how do we go back to normality? I know we spoke about this last week, but one of my biggest challenges is I'm used to a calendar being booked up a month in advance, getting meetings coming in a month later, whereas during COVID-19, every meeting I'm getting is only 2 or 3 days ahead of when it's going to be. Yeah. And that's such an unusual experience where I look to next week and my calendar's relatively empty, but I know by to Monday morning, I'll start seeing things on Wednesday and Friday starting to pack up. And that's this whole concept change. But when we go back out the doors, we can't do that, because essentially we can do that now because the only way we're going to talk is over virtual conferencing. And yes, I think virtual conferencing will definitely increase, but I don't think the answer is to go fully virtual. And I'm a technology lover and evangelist and love it all, but I still don't think technology is the end point of everything. You've got to still have that face-to-face communications, because that's what drives the really deep conversations and the things that you sometimes can't get through in a virtual conference. But I do think what we'll see is a much more even split between virtual meetings and face-to-face meetings. But I think it will take time, because I think the big other fear that will happen is the restrictions will come off very slowly, as we all know. And I think we're all coming to that realization that life will not be the same up to a year from now. And knowing at what point a face-to-face meeting is acceptable, I think is going to be a real challenge. And government is not going to guide on those sort of things. So I think every business is still going to have their own approach to how they're going to handle that. You know, are you going to start letting your employees go to meetings? If you have on-site, we have a lot of on-site employees that work on customers. At what point is it safe to let them go back to doing fully on-site? And those sort of discussions, I think, are going to take months to really iron out. So it's horrible, because it's that thought of, you know, we've got months and months and months of this. But I think the exciting part is that we've proven something that people tended to think could work, but weren't really sure. And new world working practices will fire on that productivity element. And I'm hoping that you'll see a real upskilling in terms of processes. People will take processes a lot more seriously, because if you do them right, then actually your working ways of working, even down to your startups, is a lot more effective and exciting from the surges of demand that are going to happen in experience.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you very, very much for your time today. Been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we can do that face-to-face and grab a coffee at some point in the near future. But thank you very much for your time. Cheers, Elliott.
No, thank you. Cheers.